All right, Mary Goble, Walking to Zion. Oh, how did we stand it? The West, 1856, from We Were There Too by Philip Hoos. In the years after gold was discovered in California in 1848, it seemed as if the whole weight of the country shifted west. Wagon wheels dug deep grooves and trails that went over the Rocky Mountains all the way to the Pacific. In 1862, the Homestead Act promised 160 free acres of land. Whoa, think most houses are now on like half an acre. So, and some of you might even have an acre of land. Imagine that times 160 free. Oh my goodness, that's a huge deal of land to anyone who would take it to work it for 5 years. Tens of thousands left Europe and headed to the American West, where they made houses out of the earth itself and tried to survive. Thousands of former slaves, called exodusters, left the South and sought their future in the prairie states. One group went west as an entire people. Like pilgrims before them, they called themselves saints, but most people called them something else, Mormons. Between 1847 and 1869, more than 70,000 Mormon pioneers crossed the Great Plains, struggled over the Wasatch Mountains, and skidded their belongings down into the Great Salt Lake Valley, and now what is called Utah. They called it Zion. Driven by faith, they walked 1,000 miles at 2 miles per hour, hiking beside covered wagons or pushing two-wheeled handcarts. Older children carried their smaller brothers and sisters on their back. And like the pilgrims before them, many, including 13-year-old Mary Goble, buried their parents on the trail to Zion. A little foreshadowing there. It all happened so fast. Mary Goble was growing up in Sussex, England, when her parents went to a meeting one night and joined the Mormon church. Soon she too was baptized. The next spring they sold everything they owned and hurried off to Liverpool. Before she knew it, Mary was on a steamship with 900 other new Mormons bound for America. I remember how we watched old England fade from sight, Mary wrote. We sang, "Farewell, our native land, farewell." She watched from the rail as a giant shark trailed after the ship for days, disappearing only after a passenger who had died on the ship was buried at sea. Near Newfoundland, they almost slammed into an iceberg hidden in the fog. After 6 weeks at sea, they reached Boston, gathering their belongings, and dashed to the train station. There wasn't an hour to lose. It was nearly July, and they still had to get all the way to Iowa City to meet their wagon company. Everyone said if they started across the Great Plains too late, cold weather in the west would overtake then, and they might freeze to death. A picture of winter quarters. In Iowa City, they bought a wagon and a team of oxen, but before they could depart, the sky suddenly darkened and the heavens opened. Violent winds tore apart their shelter, and sheets of rain drenched them all. Mary's infant sister Fanny, already weakened with measles, was soaked through and through. The day we started our journey, wrote Mary, we visited her grave. We felt very bad to leave our little sister there. On August 1st, which is very late to most wagon train groups, you wanted to leave in May, June. So they're leaving 2 months behind schedule. They finally started to move. Our ox teams were unbroken, and we did not know a thing about driving oxen. Unbroken means that they weren't trained to pull a wagon. We traveled 15 to 25 miles a day. We stopped one day in a week to wash. On Sunday, we would hold our prayer meetings and rest. September 1st found them still in western Iowa. Nights were cold now, and fear of Indians made them keep their camp dark at night. When they came to the Platte River in Nebraska, some hikers were already weak and ill. Mary watched one group try to drag their belongings through the icy current. There were great lumps of ice floating down the river. The next morning, there were 14 dead. We went back to the camp and went to prayers. They prayed harder and walked on. On September 23rd, Mary took the last walk she would ever take with her mother. Late that day, Mary's mother gave birth to a baby girl. They named Edith and saw her as a sign of hope, but labor left Mary's mother too exhausted to walk. From then on, she rode in the wagon. By October, they were out of water and started drinking melted snow. Each hiker was allowed only a quarter pound of a thin gruel called skilly each day. When Mary heard of a spring of fresh water a short distance away, she and a friend trudged off through the snow to try to fill up a vessel for Mary's mother. They came upon an old man who had fallen in the snow and couldn't get up. Mary started back alone to get help, but soon was lost. I began to think of the Indians, and I became confused. I waded around in the snow up to my knees. When I didn't return to camp, the men started out after me. It was 11 o'clock before they found me. They carried me to camp and rubbed me with snow. They put my feet in a bucket of water. The pain was terrible. The frost came out of my leg and feet, but not out of my toes. The oxen labored to drag the wagons through deep snow. One day, Mary's baby sister Edith died of starvation, and a few days later, her brother James was gone too. The cattle looked like walking skeletons. The Gobles abandoned their wagon and joined teams with another family in Wyoming. They are all stumbling through snow when a horseman galloped into camp with good news. Food and a fresh team of horses from Salt Lake City would arrive the next day. There was rejoicing that night. We sang songs, some danced, and some cried. They arrived in Salt Lake City at night on December 11th, 1856. 6 months before, Mary had been part of a big English family. Now everything had changed. 3 out of 4 that were living were frozen, she wrote, and my mother was dead in the wagon. Here's a picture of them reaching Salt Lake City. Mary had problems of her own. She was badly frostbitten. Early the next morning, Mormon President Brigham Young came to inspect the survivors, accompanied by a doctor. He took one look at Mary's feet and burst into tears. The doctor prepped to amputate, but Young stopped him. President Young said, "No, just cut off the toes, and I promise you'll not have to take them off any further." Months after operations, Mary's legs were still bent from the frost, but her father came up with an idea to straighten them. "I will nail a shelf on the wall," he said, "and while I'm away to work, you will try to reach it." I tried all day and for several days until at last I could reach it. Then he would move the shelf a little higher, and in 3 months my legs were straight and I had to learn to walk again. When I did, the doctor said it was surely a miracle. What happened to Mary Goble? Here's a picture of Mary Goble later in life. She and her husband, Richard Pay, ran a ranch in Nephi, Utah. She learned the Native American languages and is known for her ability to get along with the Pequot and Ute Indians who lived nearby. She was the mother of 10 sons and 3 daughters and died at the age of 70 in 1913. And their cabin, it can be found at This Is the Place Monument, and this is what her cabin looked like.